Hello, owner builders and forever home strategists. I have a wonderful guest today. She's a designer. Her name is Rebecca Langman, and her company is Revision Custom Home Designs. And she has a special product about planning, and I'm going to introduce her right now. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Rebecca, you've got this new journal. You want to just get started and show us what this is and talk to us about it?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So let's pull this up here real quick. What I've created is a blank journal. We all know that building a house, whether yourself or with a builder, takes a lot of planning. There's a lot of things that go into it that you don't know until you don't know. But you spend a lot of time on Pinterest, you spend a lot of time in these Facebook groups trying to learn what you can, and you don't want to lose what you've learned. So this journal is mostly blank. It's got lined pages and dot grid pages, but it's a great book for you to gather all of your thoughts. If you see a layout that someone's posting, you really like how the bathroom is configured, you can use the dot grid pages to sketch that out. You have lined pages so you can take notes on features. Maybe as you're planning out your kitchen, you want to keep track of all the different appliances, fixtures. Say you want to do separate range in a wall oven, or if you have this really cool idea for a coffee bar in a butler's pantry, this journal gives you a space to write all of those things down and keep them in one place. That way, then when you go to create your plans, either yourself or with the builder or designer of your choice, you have all your thoughts in one place and you haven't forgotten anything. One of the things that I think a lot of designers would love for you to know is that the more you can plan up front, the better off you'll be. You're going to save time and money primarily, because if you have to go back after the fact and undo these things because you just remembered that great idea you had 6 months ago, it's expensive. You're wasting materials if you have to rip something apart, or your builder's having to stop, figure out how to do it, and then start the process again. So I definitely want to help you, gather your thoughts in a way that doesn't happen.
Rebecca, whenever an owner builder who's building their first house starts this process, is it what do you recommend? Like go see some model homes, or just go through magazines? What's a good way to start conceptualizing all this stuff?
Well, a little bit of it comes down to knowing your own learning style. If you're the kind of person that can look at something on paper and visualize it in terms of how much space it is, then you're probably okay searching forums like Pinterest or Facebook groups or things like that. If, however, you're the kind of person that looks at a drawing on paper and just really can't picture it, and you know that about yourself, model homes are definitely a good way to go because they help you to understand the amount of space. So if you can go to a model home that has the floor plan, the little sheet that they give you when you come in, and then walk through that space and really compare what it looks like on paper to how it feels when you walk into that space, that's going to be a really great way to kind of train yourself as far as, a bathroom that is 10 foot by 8 foot, this is what it's going to feel like if I walk into that space. So it takes a little bit of practice. Another trick, if you've got some space and the weather's nice, get a roll of painter's tape, go out to your back patio and actually mask off some of the sizes that you think are going to work. And that'll help you to feel if in fact things are right, or if you need to make some adjustments.
Yeah, that's good advice. A lot of folks in our group already have their land. If they know they're going to build, when should they start planning the design? With the land, or can you start before the land? What do you recommend?
I like to plan the house as soon as possible. Land is important and there's a lot of features you want to look for based on your own personal needs and wants. But you can start building or planning the house way in advance, because you want to start thinking about how you're going to use the space. One of the differences that I always explain to people when they ask whether they need an interior designer or an architect, architects design kind of starting outward, looking in. They look at the landscape, look at how it's going to fit, and then they start to work inwards as to how the family's going to use the house. I work inside out. So I'll start by thinking, okay, what are the sight lines? What are the traffic patterns? How is this family going to use the house? And then I work my way out. Okay, now we've got the house mostly the way that we like it. Now, how does this fit the landscape? And so we get to the same result very often, but it's just a slightly different thought process to get there.
Yeah, I've heard the stat that 70% of our lives are spent in our homes. So if you start on the inside, that's a great way to get what you want and make sure that it serves you. Another question I get a lot is one story versus two story. Is it difficult to plan a two-story house, or how do you go about deciding, should I go with a one-story or a two-story from the inside out?
Again, it comes down to the family that's going to be using the space. If it's a younger family, second stories make a lot of sense often. But if it is getting to that point where, say, the kids are about ready to move out to college, kind of go out on their own, and you are starting to think about aging in place and living out the rest of your span in that house, generally at that point, one story makes more sense, simply because stairs eventually get tiresome. And sometimes, you have mobility issues that you don't foresee. So it's nice to plan as if that might happen, especially if you have the land available and you are able to go wider. Now, obviously, if you're doing an infill project, smaller lot might dictate that you have to go up. But I think if you have the option, one level is definitely nicer. So what I've got up here on the screen, this is just the cover image. It's a 100-page, mostly blank journal. You can get it on Amazon, either in hardcover or paperback. And like I said before, it does have a combination of half the pages are lined for writing and half the pages are dot grid. So you can sketch out, kind of keeps you not necessarily 100% to scale, but at least in line. And then I have sort of the cover inside page here. It's meant to be a place for you to keep all of your thoughts together. And for some people, or for a lot of people actually, building a house is maybe something they only do 2 or 3 times ever in their life. So it becomes a very personal process as well. So this journal can also be sort of a place to keep those thoughts and emotions in one place, if you're the type that likes to journal those things.
Yeah. So I tend to come from designing a house from a logical builder's point of view, but you're giving us a perspective, an inside perspective. So do you get emotions from colors or height, or what gives you that great home feeling whenever you're designing a house?
Oh, there's a lot of inspiration, and it can come from everywhere. For me, maybe you can tell from my environment, I love color.
Yeah.
So, I definitely not one to shy away from that. And I love being able to incorporate features that make each space unique without necessarily adding a lot of cost. And color paint is definitely one of those things that you have to paint your house no matter what. Picking a different color isn't going to change the cost. So for me, that's something that definitely inspires me and helps to define spaces within a home. So when I'm going through the planning process, I always create a material concept board, either for my clients or for projects I'm working on myself. And color is always a big part of that. How are we going to delineate between the private spaces and the public spaces? How are we going to draw attention to whatever the most amazing architectural feature of the house is? And color is a huge part of that.
Well, one of the biggest trends over the last 2 years has been the farmhouse. Do you think that's going to be popular next year or the coming year?
Yes and no. I think it definitely always has its place. And I think, especially right now, and I live in Montana, so I live in a fairly rural area. A lot of my clients live within an hour of a big town, but not necessarily in a big town. And even by that definition, the biggest town that I live in is only 120,000 people. So there's definitely that draw to nature, and a lot of people are moving here because that's what they want. They're leaving places like California and New York, and they are coming here to Montana and other rural states. So the farmhouse element definitely has some popularity in that regard. Plus, it is really how people live a lot. There's a lot of finishes that are chosen specific to farmhouse, the different kind of exposed wood and some of the metal that's brought in. That makes a lot of sense when you have these spaces where you actually have to have a mud room because there's mud being tracked in. I do, however, see a little bit more color than maybe that really ultra modern white version of it. So bringing in, and not necessarily color as in bright reds and blues, but instead of having a slightly beige gray wall, going 3 shades darker and having just a little bit of drama brought in by these darker mushroom and gray and grayish colors.
Yeah, this, talking to a designer at the outset, I think, is really important. Um, I'm sure you like to get your clients as soon or as early in the process as possible.
Yes.
Um, have you got any advice for how to talk with the designer, or kind of get prepared for that conversation?
Absolutely. And this journal is definitely part of that. Uh, I'm very visual. So when someone comes up to me and says they want farmhouse, my mind immediately thinks five different iterations of that. There's very rustic versions, there's very modern versions of that. But if you're able to come to your designer at that initial meeting and say, here's three pictures that I absolutely love, and here's one picture that I absolutely hate, that's a lot more valuable to me because I can look at those images and pick out what are some of those similarities, what are some things that I'm seeing through these that carry over that would make a nice cohesive design. And so images are so powerful because they're a lot more precise than words in a lot of cases. Words are open to interpretation. Everyone has a different definition of these style names. So by writing it down, by drawing pictures, that's going to be the best way to communicate. And as you kind of alluded to, hiring a designer, if you're going to work with a designer, should be very early on one of the first people, one of the first experts that you choose for your project, even before you choose your builder, before you pick all those other trades, because a designer will help you get that plan ready so that everything else moves smoothly.
That's good advice. So this new tool, this journal, I'm going to put a link in the comments section below, and also I'm going to link to your other information.
Mhm.
So Rebecca, is there anything else that you might want to leave for a good advice for the new owner builder?
The new owner builder, just start planning as soon as possible, get everything in writing. And when you do start to work with a contractor, make sure that anything that you want to communicate with your builder is in writing in some way or another, just so that there's no miscommunication.
Yeah, that's getting it in writing. It's really important to help folks manage their job, because if it's in writing, you don't have as many arguments, and you know where you're going. So,
Exactly. Yep.
Rebecca, thank you so much for this, and just feel free to respond to the group members as they comment on this article that we're doing here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you. Take care.